Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Zekiel here, and this is another lore video about Guem, a writing project that me and my friends have been working on quite some time now. But before I get into the lore, I'd like to thank everyone who watched and who actually engaged in the comment section. I really appreciate it, you guys. I never really expected actually many people to even look at it, and I really appreciate it everything. Thanks again, guys. As for this video, it'll be on Guem's magic system, which to start off, magic in Guem is, as far as learning it goes, pretty much a language. String together different word power, and the effect then depends on things like your concentration, how much mana you can put into it. Generally speaking, though, anyone can use magic, just that not everyone will have the same ease of using it. And where does magic come from? Well, magic is fueled by mana, and mana comes from the realms of magic, which are well, they're alternate planes of existence, such as the plane of fire, plane of earth, water, etc. And a well, magic enters the material world through areas where the veil separating the material world and the realms of magic is thin. And a good way to tell when you find such an area is when you find the Argareth flower. This flower doesn't need sunlight or water to grow. Instead, it roots itself in the veil separating the material and magical realms. And it actually feeds off of some of that magic energy. But it also releases magic energy due to acting as essentially a conduit through which magic can flow. You can think of it as skimming off some of the magic since it's rooted itself into the veil itself. And the realms of magic themselves are inhabited by elementals, such as there's earth elementals, ice elementals. On areas where the borders of two different realms are, there's combined elementals such as a magma elemental, steam elementals. Elementals can really come in many shapes and sizes, but they always tie to one or more the basic elements. Now, I mentioned earlier that not every species can use magic in the same way or even same degree of effectiveness. And that's because every species has a certain magic affinity scored from 0 to 100. Those with a affinity of 0 have so little magic within them and such a weak connection to magic that they cannot in any meaningful way use magic on their own. Instead, they would have to rely on enchanted items, on activating scrolls made by other people. The dwarves actually are an example of one have low magic affinity, but they do have some. And since magic is a language, and combining different keywords grants different effects, the dwarves tend to use combinations of great runic machinery. Things such as golems and even defensive turrets. The Arachne are another example, but instead of using runes that are carved into material and require something very solid such as stone or metal, they tend to use seals. Wizard ink, which is the name for a type of ink that is very conductive to mana, is used to write on the various paper talismans and grant them various effects. These are usually more passive in nature, such as granting a luck or warding off malevolent spirits. But there are active versions as well. Some of them even explode. For those with a magic affinity rating of above 30 but less than 50, such as the centaurs, they can use magic in a more direct sense by casting spells instead of having to transcribe them onto talismans and using. But they require magic focus to help them get a proper grasp on the mana that they're using, such as a wand or a staff. Humans, on the other hand, they range, depending on the individual, they tend to range around 50. There's a certain variance where some of them can vary as low as 30 or go as high as 70. But on average, humans are a 50 out of 100, which means that they can use magic without a staff of any sort of focus. Granted, having a focus helps them, but they don't strictly need it. There, of course, are also magical creatures such as Kitsune and Fiona. There are many more, but I'm using these two as examples for the purpose of this video. And they have a magic affinity of 75. They have some inherent magical abilities, such as the Kitsune, being able to use illusions to charm people, creating small fiery wisps called foxfires, and even being able to shapeshift into foxes. But they're not really going to be doing much outside of those, because magical creatures, despite having a rating of 75, it's not that all magic is open to them in that sense. It's more that they get a few abilities that they can use and just naturally, but anything beyond that they have to learn. They also may have difficulty learning things that conflict with their nature. For example, you will never find a Yukiona that learns pyromancy. High elves happen to be one of that have a affinity of 100. Another example would actually be dragons. What this means is that they don't really have magical abilities inherently the way magical creatures. Instead, it's that they have the capacity to use any type of magic, and they also learn it fairly easily as well. They also have a strong connection to the arcane, which is part of why it is that it's much easier for them to learn out. They just have a stronger connection when it comes to manipulating mana. Now, emotions can also affect magic, and there are certain people, such as a group of mages, and actually perform ritual self-mutilation in order to enhance their magic, because the strong emotion in the form of pain for the masochists is the pleasure they receive, can actually be used to affect their magic. Strong emotion in general can affect magic, but the way it doesn't necessarily make it stronger per se, as it is Well, using emotion-fueled magic would be the equivalent of smacking something with a sledgehammer, whereas casting more calmly is an act of greater finesse. So it'd be easy for those who don't know to make the assumption that, say, casting fire magic while in a fiery rage would make it stronger. And in a similar vein, actually, the Knights of Avalonia actually learn how to harness magic based on their emotional states. For example, the Knights of the Western Flame use their passion to fuel fiery swordsmanship. Now, there's different types of magic, starting with the elemental types, which would be air, lightning, earth, fire, water, and ice. There are, of course, others combinations of these, like I mentioned, with the magma elementals. Magma, in that case, being a combination of fire and earth. There is also arcane, which is pure, which is, well, it's magic in its purest form. But with arcane magic, you can do things such as increase or reduce the effect of gravity. A experienced arcane mage actually is actually capable of messing with some of the forces of the universe, which can lead to some problems, as one can imagine. And one of those problems, actually, that may have to be dealt with is in the form of that arcane magic can lead to chronomancy, which I will get more into in. But there's also what some may refer to as exotic magic types, such as light magic, shadow magic, and chronomancy, which is a derivative of arcane. Now, both because out of character, chronomancy can very quickly introduce a lot of problems, and also because it's something that's very abusable outside, like, in terms of character roleplay, and not just because of the narrative consequences of being able to mess with the time stream. I did create a group called the Tempest Fugit, who are, the simplest way can be put is, they're the time police. They are the only practitioners of chronomancy, and their jobs are to maintain the different timelines and make sure that certain key events that should not be altered, as they do, and to ensure that any new chronomancers that pop up either join them or are put in time prison to make sure that they can't misbehave. There's also divine magic types. Divine magic is different than other magics because you can only learn these in Guem if you have the favor of the deity that is responsible for that type of magic. For example, death magic, you have to be a follower of the goddess of death, Mortis, in order to be allowed to use it. And most divine magic is also not cast using traditional spells, but instead through a theurgy, which is more like a prayer. Of course, there is holy magic, which is another divine. This is what most priests and paladins use. There's also is more, it calls upon certain various spirits. And these spirits are from another realm than the traditional realms of magic. Rather than being based on a specific magic type, these spirits tend to be tied more to concepts. For example, one may find in a blood spirit that those who work will give them hemomancy. But that's about it for this little episode on magic. I hope I covered all of the magic related. But if you have any questions or comments, then feel free to put them in the comments section. I'll be sure to read through and respond to them. And I hope you guys is enjoyed watching. And it really does mean a lot to me that you guys have interest in this. But have a nice night, everyone. Bye.